Good afternoon and welcome to Let's Talk Bayfront, a lunchtime chat about the transportation projects happening on the Bayfront Parkway in the city of Erie. I'm your host, Jill Harry, the press officer and community relations coordinator for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation's Northwest region. The Bayfront Parkway is an important corridor for residents, commuters, and visitors. It is used by thousands of drivers every day, as well as hundreds of pedestrians and cyclists. Recognizing how instrumental the Parkway is to the quality of life and future prosperity of the city and the region, PennDOT has partnered with various groups to identify and design improvements at different areas of the Parkway. Most notable among those is the Central Corridor Project, which is an extensive plan to improve accessibility, safety, and efficiency along the Parkway from Sassafras Street to State Street. We restarted this series, which we had originally kicked off during the design phase. We restarted it again last month with a pre-recorded episode that gives a quick breakdown of the work that is planned in the Central Corridor this year. Today's episode will focus on another important Bayfront Parkway project, the East End from 12th Street to Port Access Road. To discuss the goals of the design and the details of the construction, our guests today are Tom McClelland, the Assistant District Executive of Design, and Del Mizban, the Construction Project Manager. Before we dive into our questions for Tom and Del, I wanted to remind those listening live that you can submit questions throughout the broadcast by using the Q&A chat box feature at the top of the page. As time allows, we will get to as many of the questions on today's topic as we can. You can also turn on captions by clicking on the three dots near the top of your screen, choose the language and speech from the drop-down box, and then turn on live captions. With that, I would like to formally welcome Tom and Del to the program. Thanks for joining us for Let's Talk Bayfront, Tom and Del. I'm going to start off with an easy one for each of you. Tell us a little bit about what you do for PennDOT and how it relates to this project.
My name is Del. I'm a construction manager. I'm in charge of the project here at the East Bayfront.
And good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom McClelland. As Jill mentioned, I'm the Assistant District Executive. I'm responsible for all the design activities here in Northwest Pennsylvania, and I've been with PennDOT about 29 years. And I was the PennDOT project manager when the Eastern Bayfront design began.
Tom, if you helped with the design process for this project, maybe you can remind us all how this project came to be and what the goals of the design were.
Sure. Back in 2015, a study was done on the Bayfront, and it looked at the entire Bayfront Parkway. It started over where it's on the west side over by I-79, where it lets off, runs through town, through the Central Bayfront, which is the currently under construction. And then, the study went back out to 12th Street on the eastern side of town. During that study, we had a public meeting. We also had a virtual type meeting where people could mark spots on a map, and we had over 500 comments from the public on that. And from those 500 comments and the public meeting, we identified over 30 potential projects to be undertaken at some point in the future. So, a lot of comments came out about the Eastern Bayfront, but the project that Del will be working on, it's going to include the intersections of Port Access, 6th Street, 8th Street, 10th Street, and 12th Street.
So among those 500 comments, what was kind of the theme of the ones that focused on this portion of the Bayfront?
Yeah, a lot of the comments on the eastern side of the Bayfront had to do with the speeds of vehicles. It had to do with the pedestrian connections getting across the Bayfront. We recognize it's very difficult to get across the Bayfront at a couple locations due to the intersections being so wide. 6th Street and 12th Street come to mind, and also Port Access has some difficulty there with all of the turn lanes that are there.
So from that feedback, we then would have developed some plans once we looked at the corridor. So, you know, you said the intersections are wide, but there's a lot of traffic. So, you know, what kind of ideas, I guess, did we develop to help kind of bridge that situation where we have a lot of traffic to move, but we also have a lot of pedestrians that want to be able to cross?
Yeah, it's kind of like a balancing act. I mean, you can't favor pedestrians and cyclists over cars all the time, but you can't disregard them either. So you have to do kind of like a perfect balance, or try to make a balance of all the modes of transportation. I mean, also EMTA and transit, they use that corridor as well. So, it's kind of it's a balancing act, making some pedestrian type improvements, but also doing some things potentially to timing of the traffic signals to make them better for the vehicular traffic as well.
I know when we did the recent public involvement and public comment period, we showed some maps that showed how we were going to change the median and narrow the lanes slightly. So how does something like that address some of the issues that people were bringing to us when they were talking about this portion of the parkway?
Yeah, so one of the things that traffic engineer in their toolbox that they use to kind of help pedestrians uh, is to narrow the lanes. So we had 12-foot lanes out there. That's what's there existing right now. But most cars and trucks, they can handle a 10 or 11-foot lane. So with the new project, we're going to be striping the lanes at 11-foot. So there's 4 or 5 lanes out there depending on which part you're in. So that's 4 or 5 feet that pedestrian isn't exposed to traffic, or that cyclist going across. And we added that spot into the median. Again, not to make a point of refuge because we don't want anybody stuck out there, but we wanted to narrow their crossing and their exposure to traffic. So that will help the pedestrian experience. One of the other things we're doing out there as far as pedestrians and cyclists is the actual traffic signals themselves. Way back when traffic signals were put in, they used to have the walk, don't walk signal with the words walk and don't walk spelled out. And then probably about year 2000, it went to what we call a hand and a man kind of crossing. So with that in regard, you had another progression here into the future, which we have countdown pedestrian timers. And so on the don't walk phase of the traffic signal, you've probably seen these on the 12th Street, our newly completed signal project in the city of Erie. We have the countdown timers that gives that visual representation of how much time do I have left to get across. So you're not kind of stuck in the middle and know how much time you have to get across. One of the nice features about these signals too is there'll be audible pedestrian signals for the visually impaired. Just like that's kind of a standard here in the city of Erie. We put that on all signals in the city of Erie. So that's going to be part of the project as well.
Now, Del, I didn't forget that you're on, and I know that the project started a few weeks ago, but clearly we can't be at every intersection at once. Tom listed there a pretty good list of different places where we're going to make these improvements. So maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of what the schedule is for the work on this project.
Correct. Right now we are basically, we've started work a few weeks ago, and as far as intersection work, we haven't started any of that yet. Now, next week, we're going to actually put our first traffic phasing in and start working on the island dividers and start working on reducing the lane widths. So with that said and done, there are 5 intersections that are going to get affected. And eventually we're starting at 12th Street and working our way toward 10th Street. Once that section is complete, we're going to start on 10th Street, work our way down to 8th Street, and then from 8th Street to 6th Street, and then finally from 6th Street to Port Access Road. So the traffic signal work will probably take place closer toward the end of the project, let's say in September and October. Right now, we just have temporary phasing of the traffic so we can get our work done and get these islands put in place.
So there's the 5 different intersections, there's the medians in between, and then there's these new pedestrian signals that we're putting in some places. So which ones are getting those signals that Tom was talking about with the countdown and pedestrian heads and the audible?
Basically, all 5 intersections are going to get the new signal for the pedestrian put in, which includes 12th Street, 10th Street, 8th Street, 6th, and Port Access.
So one of the things that usually is most important to folks when we do this kind of work is what kind of traffic interruptions are we going to have? So you said you're going to start with the median, so you'll be in the middle of the roadway. So what will people see as you're doing that kind of work?
Basically, for most of the traffic southbound, we're reducing the lanes to one straight lane that you can go through, and then on intersections, we'll have a turning lane. So far, we've not had any traffic issues. The traffic has been moving along very smoothly. Now, every now and again during the rush hours, there is some congestion, but so far everything is running very smooth.
And then when we go to do the pedestrian signal upgrades, will that require any type of traffic interruptions, or is that work mostly done off-road?
No, all our traffic signals are in place. The old existing traffic mast arms and signals are in place. To get the work done, we're modifying them a little bit, but once all the new equipment arrives, like I said, maybe toward September, we'll install all the new pedestrian ped poles, pedestrian signal heads, and the new traffic signal, which all coincides and works together basically as one unit. So we're a little ways away from that. And I think that I don't see a big problem with traffic or pedestrian traffic per se. Like I said, we have a good construction crew here, and things have been running fairly smoothly so far.
All right, I'm just going to ask you one more question, and it's travel interruptions related as well, Del. Just to clarify for anyone who's listening who's concerned, you're going to see some lane restrictions from time to time, but they will move through the corridor approximately 1 block at a time. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that people just need to be a little aware that they may have to slow down, but traffic will continue to move through the east end of the Parkway throughout this entire project. That is correct?
Correct. And I just like to ask everybody not to be in a big rush and take their time going through the traffic zone and watch out for the crew.
That's a great reminder, Del. Tom, I also have a follow-up question for you. You mentioned earlier that this project came out of all of those comments from the study. And it kind of brings about that general question that we get with a lot of projects, which is what do we do with that information we gather, whether it's during a study or a public comment period for a construction project that's upcoming?
Yeah, that's a good question. PennDOT has a program called PennDOT Connect. So, we store all these public comments. So if we have a project in the future going in an area where we might have a comment on, we'll open all those old comments back up and take a look and make sure we're addressing them, or if something changed out there. So, we take all the comments very seriously. They're looked at. We always ask for feedback. The people who live in a community know it better than, people that are designing it at times if we're not from there originally. So, we love the feedback, and we incorporate it into our projects.
And one more question for you, Tom. I mentioned it at the beginning that this project is one of several, and you kind of got into it a little bit there about how this project is one of actually 30 potential projects along the Bayfront. So how does this project and the Central Corridor, really help PennDOT get to that overall transportation goal for the city of Erie?
Yeah, the project in a nutshell, it kind of improves pedestrian safety. And as Dell mentioned too, it's modernizing all the traffic signals that were installed 25 to 30 years ago when the Bayfront was first established. So it improves the quality of life for, not only the vehicular traffic, but especially the pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, provides us safer crossing experiences and accessibility to the downtown and all the things going on down there, and also the Central Bayfront that's under construction right now as well. And of course, I don't think we've mentioned yet the trail that's kind of on the eastern side of the Bayfront Parkway that goes out to Barron and into the Central Bayfront. So it's providing another connection there as well. So it's really helping to provide those connections for the city, and looking forward to seeing all these great projects completed myself. It's exciting.
I know that it's a lot for people to take in because this project, the Central Project, we also have one coming up closer to Cranberry Street later this construction season. So for those who are listening, if you're thinking to yourselves, this is a lot to take in, you're in luck. We have a website that connects all of these projects together so that you can keep tabs on all of them or just get the updates on what's happening with them. And that is penndot.pa.gov/Bayfront Parkway Project. And we'll put that in the chat, but you can go there. You will find information on the East Side project as well as any future projects connected to the Central Corridor project. And with that, I thank you, Tom and Dell, for all the great information today. It was really great to get some updates on the project and a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish out there. The next episode of Let's Talk Bayfront will return to the topic of the Central Corridor. So we will have some representatives from the construction team working on that project to give us an update. We will post the time and the date for that episode on the Facebook group called Bayfront Parkway Project, as well as our regional X account, which is 511 PA Erie, and then on that webpage that I already talked about, penndot.pa.gov/Bayfront Parkway Project. A recording of this episode will also be put on the website, so if you want to share it or go back and listen to any of the information, you can look for that here in the near future. If you have any questions about this project that we discussed today, the Central Bayfront project, or anything else related to construction, you can always send us an email at bayfrontparkwayproject@pa.gov. Thank you again, Tom and Dell, and thank you to Stephanie for producing today's episode. I hope everybody has a great afternoon.